Speaking of Iranian activity in the region, just a day after Russian officials called on Israel to stop its arbitrary attacks in Syria, Israeli leaders are firing back. In fact, Environmental Protection Minister and Security Cabinet member Zev Elkin said on Thursday morning that as long as the Iranians continue to cross our red lines, Israel's policy of action in Syria will continue decisively. And joining us now with more on the topic is founder and executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Martin Sherman. Dr. Sherman, thank you as always for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me again.
All right, so first of all, how involved do you think Russia will get in Syria when it comes to Israeli, quote-unquote, aggressions?
Well, put it this way, I'm normally someone who endorses a hawkish stance towards Israel's defense issues. But I must say, in this case, I'd much rather see less brash bravado from our leaders and much less idle prattle. I have a feeling that we're making things more difficult for us by talking too much about Israel's involvement in these attacks. I think it would have been a far more judicious policy to keep quiet about it.
Which is what we were doing before.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much doubt about who's doing it. I don't think anyone really thinks that the Canadian Air Force is involved. I think for everyone who needs to know knows who's doing it. But I think bringing it up in such a high-profile, public way is a mistake. Look, the last thing we really want to do is to get into some kind of conflict with the Russians. I mean, in many ways, the Russians have been remarkably amenable to Israel's activities there.
Do you think that they're doing enough, though, to prevent Iranian encroachment on the Israeli border? Because that was kind of the biggest, I want to say, disagreement between Israeli officials and the Russian ones, saying that, Israel says, Russia, you can do more, and Russia says we're doing as much as we can.
Well, obviously they're not doing enough. Whether that's all they can do or they're prepared to do is another question. I mean, the Russians are interested in Russian interests. I probably think that Putin has a certain amount of pro-Israeli sentiments, but I don't think that will interfere with the way he sees and the way he pursues Russian interests. Coming over to the studio, I was listening to a broadcast from the former head of the Israeli Air Force, who says, already our freedom of action in the north of Syria has been somewhat constricted. In the south, up until recently, we've had more or less freedom of action. I think we should do as little as possible, at least in the public sphere, to do anything to harm that freedom of action. And I don't see the Russians making too much effort to have friction with the Iranians. But on the other hand, I think we have to be firm, but considerate of their interests.
All right, Dr. Sherman, as always, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.